was Reagan's speechwriter, and Reagan always said, "Well, Dana, always start off with a little funny story." And so I was thinking of this one that Reagan used to tell about a fella who saw his best friend across the street. His best friend was a lawyer, and this guy was in some trouble, and he runs across the street, and he says, "God, you're my best friend. I wouldn't ask this favor of anyone else, but I really need some help. And I know, look, you earn your living this way. I don't expect you to do it for free. Could you please answer 2 questions for me for $500? And the lawyer says, "Well, sure I can. What's your second question?" There you go. Well, we got our city attorney, we got lawyers all over the place here with us today. So do we feel safe? I think we do. Okay. Now, just a little bit about what's going on in Congress, what's going on overall in the government. The budget is this year will be $4 trillion. Trillion dollars. And of that, about 400 billion will be deficit spending, up to about 600 billion. Deficit's going to start going up now. From it went down a little bit, now it's going to go back up to about $600 billion. At that rate, if we do not stop that, of course, eventually we will become Greece. There's nothing sacred about the United States, in that if we continue to build up the payment on the debt payment, your interest payment on your debt now is $250 billion of our budget every year is payment on debt. Now, that's when the interest rates are low. Now, I don't know if who controls the interest rates. I don't know if there are forces at play in the world, or whether this is a free-flowing thing, but we better hope they're our friends, because I will tell you that puts all of us in jeopardy. If the interest rates go up, we're gone. We're bankrupt. We're Greece. And we'll have to start cutting seniors off from Social Security, veterans off from their benefits, cutting down on things that are absolutely essential. And so we have to start prioritizing, which we haven't been able. No Congress that I've been in for 28 years has been able to prioritize. And that's what it's all about. And to bring the other thing that we can do to start making things better is what I started in back in 2004 with the Commercial Space Act. When the government has to do something and nobody else can do it, obviously that has to be the case. But if there are things the private sector can do, for example, offering legal advice to people with lower incomes, which is what I think we just heard about, that is, we have to go in those directions. With the Commercial Space Act, let me tell you that I believe is one of my crowning achievements, because it's changed the entire nature of our space program. And NASA still is there, NASA still is involved, but we've brought in the private sector, and they're doing things much cheaper, much more effective. Now, you'll hear lots of these reports. Well, SpaceX gets these subsidies. SpaceX doesn't get subsidies. These companies don't get subsidies. They get contracts to do specific jobs that would cost more if the government was doing it themselves. And one example with SpaceX, for example, is that now they're not only delivering the government supplies to the space station, but they're making sure they're trying to develop a system that is totally reusable. This first time they had a rocket land. Now, the first time it didn't work. Okay, well, but the job had already been done. So that mission had already been done. So it wasn't a waste of a rocket, but they're designing their operations in a way that could lead to a dramatic reduction in the cost of getting things into space. NASA never did that, period. NASA never did that. So what we need to do is understand that the federal government has a role to play, but where the private sector can come in, we need to do that. And one of the things that we're finding out, for example, and we've been working on the veterans issues. We just passed a veterans bill, and the primary idea is the government, needs to take care of our veterans. But if it's not, let's see if there's some private sector things. And what the Republicans are suggesting, and unfortunately some of the Democrats are really opposed to this idea, and that is if a veteran goes to a veterans hospital and is not admitted or is not being dealt with by the doctors because they don't have time or whatever, that veteran should be able to go to any private hospital, and the taxpayer should pick it up. And so he gets treatment right away rather than waiting 3 months or so while his condition deteriorates. And so I'm very supportive of that. And that's an idea that's moving forward. Republicans are pushing that. And that will be the policy, I believe, within a few years, because we've already passed legislation suggesting that. Well, that's so I am still involved in space policy. Next year, if I am reelected, I plan to take the commercial space bill one step further. And one of the people, one of those investors that are investing in space now is Mr. Branson from Galactic, and he's got a good idea about utilizing what we call suborbital space. And that is where you're not going into orbit into space, way up there, but you're taking into space so you're not into gravity, and you can actually go anywhere in the world. Burt Rutan was the one who actually developed this whole the technique to how to do it, and you can go anywhere in the world in a half an hour. And if we actually encourage this industry, we could have a system in place, a commercial space system, which will go into suborbital space, and you'll take off from a regular runway at a regular airport and go up. And what it is when it gets to a certain level, like 70,000 feet, the mothership lets the other ship go, or the other airplane go, and you can go anywhere in the world within an hour. Like if you're in New York, you want to go to Australia, you'll be there in an hour, and you can fly home that night. Now, there's also tremendous, of course, there are tremendous military and security benefits to this as well. And I'm very much involved with that technology, and I will be submitting a bill. I don't know if it's going to go next year, but we'll see who's president and what's going on. And I hope he or she will look well on this bill. And it's called Zero Gravity, Zero Tax. If you have a new enterprise like this one that we're talking about, not ones that are already up there, but we should make sure they don't have to pay capital gains tax at least, because then people will invest in this new approach. And again, it's not costing the government any money unless you have something new that's up there. So anyway, that's the type of things I've been doing as a member. I am also a senior member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and now the chairman of one of the major subcommittees. I've been overseeing our relationship with Russia, with Europe, and with the stance, Central Asia. We are in a desperate situation right now because we are up against an enemy that is not like the enemy that we've been used to. During the Cold War, we faced, yes, the Soviet Union and others that might go to war with us, might be a nuclear exchange. Well, that was threatening, and we had people pushing communism, being financed by Russia and China and others. But never have we faced a situation where you have a fanatic religion that is willing to murder. Well, we just commemorated 3,000 Americans that were slaughtered, right in front of us, and these are all civilians, And none of those three, I guess there might have been a couple, policemen considered the military. They're here to protect us, but they're not in the military. They're not a threat to somebody overseas. And by the way, the people who perpetrated that crime, they meant to kill 50,000 Americans. They didn't mean to kill 3,000. They were going to kill 50,000 because they didn't know those buildings were going to be able to be evacuated, and they thought the buildings would fall over and fall onto other buildings. This type of insanity among a religious group of fanatics is something we have not been up against before, and it threatens all of us because we now have fanatics who are, for example, in Pakistan, have the nuclear weapons. And so we have to be very, very serious about this. And I've been deeply involved in this fight for a long time. And one of the things that I have said that's the most controversial, so, and I am known as someone who speaks his mind, is we need to work with Russia to defeat radical Islam, but real bluntly. And Russia is not perfect. Putin is certainly not up to our standards. But if we are to thwart radical Islam, because Russia is targeted the same way we are by radical Islam, and we have to prioritize who our enemies are. Ronald Reagan ended the Cold War by doing just that. Russia was at that time the Soviet Union, and he said, what is our primary threat in the world? And that was the Soviet Union. And he said, okay, our strategy is they lose and we win. Go make it happen. And that's what a bunch of us did. And so right now, our strategy has to be radical Islam has to be defeated before they kill more hundreds of thousands, even millions of us, of the United States and other people in the West. They think they're going to terrorize us into a retreat from the world and let these fanatics take over. Well, that's not going to happen. So anyway, I've been very deeply involved in that, and deeply involved in that strategy of trying to bring the Russians into the fight against radical Islam. I am having, for example, a meeting with the most important person in the world on Monday. Now, who is the most important person in the world to your security? I will tell you. His name is President El-Sisi of Egypt. If Egypt falls to these radical Islamists, which it almost did, there is no more holding the line. All of the entire Middle East will collapse. There will be no, after 10 years, if El-Sisi leaves, after 10 years, there will be no friendly elements in the Middle East whatsoever. And they will have no restraint. So I am the chairman of the Egyptian Caucus that is aimed at trying to help General Sisi. And now we have several people here who are part of local government. I see my good friends, and Michelle's here, of course, and Mark and others. But let me just note this, that's one threat, and the other threat is what I mentioned earlier, that we are going to basically succumb to our own irresponsibility in terms of financing and running government. I'm going to report to you something right now that I think will be as shocking to you as it was to me when I got all the details. The F-35, Republicans, if we have our spots where we need to work on and make sure that we're doing the right thing. Republicans tend to say whatever the military wants, they're going to get. Well, our defense is not related on how much we spend. It's how good a job we do. That's why I'm talking about helping General Sisi. You know, we could spend another $1 trillion on defense and it wouldn't make up for that loss. But we have spent $400 billion. $400 billion of that's the amount of all the money that we're spending in deficit this year on one project, and it's not working. It's called the F-35. We have got to have more discipline with the technology development programs of our military. This is outrageous. $400 billion. I'm not talking about a million now. So I have a lot of fights with my fellow Republicans on these type of issues. We don't need, for example, also to be spending all of this money defending Europe. If we do reach out to Russia, we don't need to spend those billions and billions of dollars. But under our current budget, and this is Republicans, I'm against it, however, they want to spend $1.5 billion more a year simply to have another American tank brigade in Europe, even while our European friends are nowhere near their NATO commitments to support their own defense. And you know, the Belgians say, oh, well, we're going to increase our spending on defense. You know what they did? They built a huge new NATO headquarters. Oh, it's very luxurious. It's got the swimming pool and the gym and everything, you know. And that's their new upgrading their spending for defense. Now, we've got to get realistic on spending for defense. We've got to be realistic about the enemy. We've got to be realistic in being responsible with our own spending patterns here at home. That's what I'm trying to do. And thank you for letting me fight your fight in Washington, D.C. And if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you very much. You want any questions, or is that...
Anybody got any questions for the Congressman? This is your chance.
This is it.
Hi, Dana. Steve Nagel.
Sure, Steve.
My question is, what are we doing as a country in protecting the South China Sea and the trade routes there?
Well, that's a good point, and let me put it this way. 20 years ago, being on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I went to the Philippines. My dad, by the way, fought in the Philippines during World War II, and I heard that the Chinese were doing something out of the Spratly Islands, and it seemed it was very disturbing that they were trying to take over an area, and Spratly Islands they're reefs that are above water at high tide and or low tide, and then at high tide they're below water. And I heard they were going to build some kind of bases out there, and I go, what? And I could not get our CIA to take, they're supposed to do this for us, who are on the committees overseeing our policy. I could not get them to get me over that island to see what was going on. Now they knew, because there were because we have satellites, you know. I mean, we have satellites. They could have taken me over there, or they could have given me pictures based on satellites. Our intelligence agencies have been trying not to focus on this for 20 years. And the Chinese have been slowly building up, and now what they're doing is they're taking these reefs, they're making them into islands, and then they're claiming that's their territory, which then gives them the right to claim the sea lanes that go near their territory and the air lanes. Now, what does that mean? What they're really going after is to say they can control the supply lines to Japan and Korea, and Japan and Korea are vital to our safety, our security, etc. So and so what am I doing? I'm trying to. I basically have been for 20 years trying to focus on it. By the way, I got one story. It's a funny story. I actually got over the Spratly Islands about 10 years ago. I finally got there and was able to document this whole power grab on the part of the Chinese, and how we did it. There was a president named Estrada who was elected in the Philippines. He was an old movie actor, but he was not like Ronald Reagan. He was drunk all the time. So my friend, I brought a friend with me. His name was, you may know, Skunk Baxter. You know Skunk Baxter? Skunk Baxter was the lead guitar player with the Doobie Brothers and Steely Dan, one of the great rock and roll guys. Well, I took him with me there to the Philippines, and we had a dinner appointment with Estrada, who I brought this big bottle of tequila. And Skunk brought these records because he was a Doobie Brothers fan. So anyway, as the dinner goes on, the guy said, well, can I do anything for you? And we said, well, yeah, actually, we've been trying to get out to the Spratly Islands. Do you think you could get us out there? And the guy, oh, yeah, my plane. You can use my plane. And so there was only one C-130 that was working in the Philippines. And he picks up the phone right there at the dinner, and he said, blah, 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 and he goes, okay, tomorrow morning you're flying out there. So we actually flew out to the Spratly Islands the next day, and right before we took off, the national security advisor to the president of the Philippines, who happens to be a buddy of mine, says, Dana, look at this, you got all of this clouds around here, but the Spratlys are right in the middle like a donut hole. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see much. So we went up, and we were up about 15,000 feet, and couldn't see anything. And finally I said, and Skunk was right there in the cockpit with me, and he says, I said, I don't think we're gonna see much up here this high. And Skunk goes, let me handle this. And he goes to the pilot, and this Filipino pilot, and he goes, we're gonna take this down to about 2,500 feet. And oh no, we're not permitted to do that. Skunk Baxter has all of these ID cards from his concerts and things, and he pulls it out and says, this is my authorization to take authority over this aircraft. And I am now in charge, I am now declaring myself in charge of this aircraft. You will take this plane down, this is an order, take this plane down to 2,500 feet. Oh, yes, sir. and down we went, and we get through the donuts. We get through the donut, we're there in the donut hole, and there it is, right there, right in front of us. And these Chinese guys, they had 5 warships there, which was illegal, and they're all running for their guns because they think the airplane coming down is coming down to bomb them or something. But we got out of that one okay. So, and one last thought about the illegal alien issue. And one of the things we cannot do is we cannot bring people into our country illegally by the millions. We have millions of people who are here illegally. And the more people that come in here who end up, by the way, bringing down the wages of American workers, we should be proud that our American people earn more than people working in third world countries. But they're doing that, but these folks are basically on the situation where they get their children's education, their children's health care, and there are a number of criminals among them, so the job of our police is much more difficult, much more costly. That is a cost that we can no longer absorb. And we need, hopefully when we have a next president, whoever that is, we will be able to finally come to some kind of compromise on this issue that will stem the flow of people into our country. By the way, we bring 1 million legal immigrants into our country every year, and I'm proud of that. When I say stem the flow, I don't mean of legal immigration. I'm talking about this on top of the 1 million that we bring in, another 1 million who are here illegally, and we don't know who they are, whether they've got some sort of disease or something. And so that's an issue that I will be taking leadership on. Sure.
John Collins, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Fountain Valley. I can't remember a presidential election where I have had difficulty deciding who I wanted to vote for. Not because I'm going to be voting for the person that I like the best. It's the 2 people I like the least and who I like less than the other person. And probably, well, but I don't want to get into anything political with you, Dana, but too late? Okay. But, no. He's the bug man here, so he knows these things. But is there anything in Congress going around right now of being scared of no matter who gets elected?
Well, I will have to say it's very odd that we have 2 candidates who, on both parties, who would have no chance in the world of being elected if the other party hadn't nominated that person. So, whether it's Hillary or whether it's Trump, if it wasn't for Hillary, Trump could never get elected, and if it wasn't for Trump, Hillary could never get elected. And it's, we just have to grin and bear it, I guess. I mean, I'm sorry to say that. The process, they work through the process. Maybe that's a weakness in our process. And that, but listen, I am confident that whether it's Hillary or Don Trump, working with people who want to see our country succeed, I think we will prevail. You know, America will prevail no matter who gets elected. Michelle.
I want to talk about your bill and Christian priority on refugee status, because you're doing a great job there.
Thank you, Michelle. I almost forgot. In fact, this is a bill I've been working on more than most of all my other pieces of legislation. In fact, I had meetings on it yesterday with the top leadership of the House, and this is what I have Bill 4017, and what it basically says is this: we're recognizing that this radical Islamic threat to us, but what we really recognize is that right now, as we speak in the Middle East, this radical Islamic terrorists have targeted mainly, they've targeted anybody who disagrees with them, but they are totally committed and focused on eliminating the Christian community in the Middle East. They have targeted Christians for genocide in the Middle East, every bit as much as Hitler targeted the Jews to get rid of them from Europe. That's what's going on right now, Christians being targets of genocide. So I have a bill that just basically acknowledges that and says that Christians being targets of genocide, and I named the countries in which this slaughter is going on. And I say, from those countries, anyone who immigrates here or has refugee status, anyone who is getting a visa to come here for whatever it is, I say refugee status or immigration status, the Christians being targets of genocide should have priority. They should have priority because they are the ones who are the most vulnerable and most targeted. And unfortunately, I've been getting, because we are bringing in tens of thousands, yes, even hundreds of thousands of immigrants from the Middle East, and 99% of them are Muslims. And I will tell you that is a disgrace. And the president has this big disagreement I have with our president, who says that you cannot take their religion into consideration. Well, I will tell you, if the Christians are the ones who are being targeted for genocide, we need to take that into consideration. And so we're fighting a big fight on this, and I don't know if I'm going to succeed or not, but as we speak, they're being slaughtered. And I put together a group of religious leaders, and last week, and I talked just yesterday with the top leadership of the Republican Party on this. I don't know how it's going to come out, but I'm pushing as hard as I can on this bill, 4017. Yes, ma'am.
Michelle Jensen, can you talk a little bit about what's happening in North Korea?
Thank you. Well, yeah, what's happening in North Korea is that you have this family of maniacs who've controlled that government for all these years, and they were nuts. They are crazy, and now you've got a situation where this young fat kid who's got incredible power is in charge of a country. This is a kid who shoots people for falling asleep when he's giving a speech. He just shot one of his top guys in his cabinet because the guy fell asleep while he was giving this long-winded talk. He actually murdered a guy who'd been one of his top advisors to his father. He threw them alive to dogs who ate him alive. This is as monstrous, as weird as it gets. And here's the worst part about it. I happen to believe that what we're talking about is a front for the Chinese. Frankly, I do not believe that fat kid can oversee the development of a nuclear weapons program. I don't believe that. But I can tell you who can, and that's the Chinese. And when you see the Koreans launching a rocket and saying that they're developing this nuclear weapon, think of it this way. They launch a rocket over Japan. What that is a message from Beijing to Tokyo. Because, you know, everybody, I mean, Japan knows that the government of North Korea is just basically under the control. They're not going to do anything without Beijing's approval. And so I think we have to make sure that we stand tight with the, I would hope that someday that we can be unified Korea, and I would hope that our South Korean friends are able to basically reach out to the people of the North someday and bring a real democratic government to play in Korea. So, but until then, the Chinese are using it against the Japanese. And we have to remain. But how do you deter a nutcase? I mean, that's it. Mark?
Yeah, can you give us a little more information on the Syrian refugee crisis? And I guess our president wants to bring in a whole bunch of refugees from Syria.
Well, that's part of my my bill would say that those refugees that are coming in from Syria, that the priority Christians among the other countries where this is at play, where the refugees, we should recognize that the Christians are being murdered, and from that group of people, we should be bringing in the Christians. And the fact is that the president won't accept that, but if the president won't do that, at least we should make sure that all of these people are vetted, and as many of Christians as we can who are being killed. But what we're ending up with around the country, what we're seeing, are healthy young males who are Muslims. And by the way, just a note, after the San Bernardino shooting, we had a big a conference. We get briefed by the top intelligence people of our country, and we have a briefing room that sits about 400 people that's underground right near the Capitol. And so we were all called into this briefing room to talk about this Islamic threat domestically, not the Islamic threat internationally, domestically. So because we just had all these people slaughtered in San Bernardino. So they're talking to us. Here you got top guys in CIA and NSA and Homeland Security are briefing us. Now, we all saw that picture, didn't we, when that fellow was bringing his wife in, and they were there, right there, and getting their visa, and he has a picture of himself there and his wife there, and I hope you all saw it. So they went through the regular process, and they're here. And they ended up slaughtering these really fine people, you know, social workers, people who are out trying to help other human beings, and this radical Islamicist felt that he had to murder them. My gosh. So anyway, we asked, how can we vet them? And they're lamenting, this agency, they're lamenting, oh, how can, you know, they tell us this and that, but how can we tell that they're not, when they say they're not a member of this group or that group, how can we possibly, you know, go back and do the inspections there in their home country, you know, back there? We don't have the ability to check on all of that. Well, you know, I'm going to brag here, all right? So I got up and I said, how about polygraph tests? Do we use polygraph tests? Because right now, you know, lie detector tests, they actually have them on very smaller things. Within 5 minutes, you can have somebody with their hand on a laptop and ask them some questions, and then you'll be able to know if they've lied within about 15 minutes. And I said, what about, do we require lie detector tests of everybody coming from that region coming here? I kid you not. These guys are looking at each other. They don't know, and they're turning around and saying, do we give lie detector tests? No, we don't. The answer is we don't. What kind of insanity is this? So we have been taking people's word. You know, all you have to do is ask, do you believe that killing someone for your religion would be acceptable to God? That's what you ask that one. If the guy says no and he's lying, or yes and he's lying, we know right away. And there's 4 or 5 questions you could ask like that and make sure anybody who really was a threat of terrorism could be vetted out. Well, Ken Calvert and I have a bill that requires this now. So anyway, is that insane? I mean, is that all of this time we've been bringing people in, especially from Syria and places like that, and we have not even given them a lie detector test to see if they're maybe, by the way, if you only sneak in 10 of 10 people, they could kill hundreds of Americans. We've seen that. So anyway, this is a great challenge that we have, and we have a great challenge in making sure that we don't lump all of the Muslims into saying that they're the bad guys. Because like I just told you, General Sisi in Egypt, he's our only hope. If he falls, he is a Muslim. Abdullah in Jordan is a Muslim. These are fine people, and they're on our side. And there's lots of Muslims in the world. I would probably say at least 75% of the Muslims in the world want to have nothing to do with these terrorists. And there was one last point I wanted to make about that, and I forget what it was, but it was really important. It'll pop up.
John, we want to make yours the last question, if we could, please.
He was answering my question. Thank you, Dana, for being here. John Etheridge, I appreciate your service to the country. What a great honor it is to be here with you. And you answered the question about how do you vet? Is it even possible to vet 100,000 refugees coming here?
Oh yeah, sure it is. No, it is. All you have to, 100,000 people are going to come here, and you just say, hey, you're not going to spend 15 minutes on each one? Well, you wouldn't have to. Yeah, and then, by the way, you could have a couple dozen people being able to do this. So you get 100,000 people through a process if you're using a very quick lie detector test.
Does the current administration, would they support that type of thing?
No, they do not. They have not. They're not opposing it, but they have not been of any support to that. And that suggestion and that effort on our part, the bill is still in play. Has been in play for over 6 months now.
Is there anything we as the public can do to help with that? As the public that's at risk?
I think in the election process, the people will decide who wants to be, who they want to. They want a tough guy, or they want someone who is more managerial type person, and that's, I think, what choice we have to make. That will affect national security. One last question, then. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Ben Sosa. With the email scandal that's going on, is it kind of narrow-minded to think that this is just happening to Hillary and maybe Colin Powell? Is it going on in a broader?
Okay. Well, let me just suggest, I voted against there was several votes that were dealing with the ability of our intelligence services to conduct their operations and Homeland Security, etc. And I voted against about half of them because I think it's right, and that we have as much hacking and as much listening into phone conversations overseas, but that does not give them a right does not give the authorities the right to record every phone call that every citizen of the United States makes. There still has to be some due process involved, and so there's I forgot what your question was exactly.
Well, is it narrow-minded to think that this isn't happening in a more broad spectrum than just Hillary or?
It is. Our intelligence community has been basically having. I would say they've been out of bounds a lot when it comes to overseeing American citizens at home. They have not been out of bounds. Look, They have not been out of bounds overseas. I don't believe that people overseas are protected by the United States Constitution. I don't believe those people in Gitmo deserve to have constitutional rights. And by the way, with this insistence on closing Guantanamo, I'm going to brag to you again, because this is what I'm doing representing you in Washington. We are hearing on the president's proposal and his insistence that we keep letting these people go out of Gitmo and then eventually and close it down. Well, we've let hundreds of these prisoners go, and so they're testifying before the Foreign Affairs Committee that the president is insisting they close it down and let the rest of them go, many of which would come here, by the way. So, now you got to remember, hopefully they've been letting the hardest cases stay while they're letting the least threatening cases go. Hopefully they've done that, which I can't say for sure, but I asked them, I said, look, you've let these people go, several hundred go already. Have any of them gone back and killed Americans? Oh, they're very frightened. Just like the guys on, did you take a lie detector? Do we have lie detector tests? They're looking back and finally they go, well, yes, there have been a number that have gone back and have killed Americans. Oh, well, great. Now they want to let go the last 150. President's insisting on this, or bringing them to the United States. Give me a break. Let them stay in Guantanamo. If these are the toughest of the tough guys that were picked up from the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, let's keep them there. And so while they're there in Guantanamo, and by the way, again, and I get in a lot of trouble for this, I don't care if you've got a guy if they know they have information, and the last administration was under attack because there are a number of prisoners that were tortured, waterboarded. Now, by the way, all of our special forces guys get waterboarded to show how you might have to stand up to pressure. And one of the three that were how horrible it is that we tortured this guy was the guy who masterminded 9/11. And we had to find out whether or not there was another terrorist attack on the way. 3 cheers for the guys who were trying to get that information out of him. And we're at war with people who want to kill thousands of Americans at a time if they can. Or we'll get up in San Bernardino and just shoot a half a dozen or a dozen people who are at a meeting with them or are part of a Boston Marathon. And by the way, these are all tied together because what it is you've got a radical Islamic movement that is reaching out over the internet in a lot of cases to these people. And I will have to say that I have voted for every bill that permits the American people to know just who was responsible for 9/11 and to sue the Saudis for the role that they played in 9/11. So that's the type of things we're doing, and these are very heavy issues, and I'm very proud to carry that weight for you and for the people of our constituency. So God bless you all. Thanks for letting me be your member of Congress.
Thank you for your candor.
Yeah, he's commenting on my candor. Thanks. The one thing I don't know how not to do that because I don't have a very good memory, and I just have to say what I really believe and what I've done because otherwise, if I wasn't, I'd have to remember that I'd fibbed to somebody. So anyway, thanks very much. God bless.